Hello everybody, my name is Dave Jackson and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog. This is normally a video games deep dive review show, but we have a special episode today. We're going to be talking about our experiences doing the first year of our Backlog Resolutions challenge. But I did not undertake this by myself. I am joined by three wonderful friends. All of them are returning guests to the show. First of all, we have the host of Play Along Podcast, Jared Moss. Jared, welcome back.
Dave, so good to be here. So excited for this. I tackled so many games specifically because of this challenge, so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah. We also have one of the hosts of Fun and Games and Reignite podcasts. Welcome back, Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
Hi, I'm really happy to be back. I feel like we just talked about backlogs on some level.
Yeah, just a couple months
Deja
ago.
vu?
Yeah. Funny you're here to talk about backlogs again. It's so unlike you, Matt.
Yeah, never. It's not. I don't have any. What's a video game?
Exactly.
What's a video game?
And we're also joined by a returning guest, one of our community member and backlogger extraordinaires. Welcome back to the show, Soccr.
Hi, I like video games.
Yeah, I hope so, because we're going to talk about how much all of us, maybe how some of us like video games a little bit too much.
That may be a problem for some of us, but yeah, we'll get there.
So we're going to talk about what has become a yearly tradition in the Tales from the Backlog community, which is Backlog Resolutions. So what happened is at the beginning of 2024, we started up a new community event challenge type of thing where all of us here on the show and then actually 20 other people made lists of the games that we promised that we were going to play from our backlogs in 2024. And today we're going to talk about how that challenge went, what we learned, our successes, our failures. We'll laugh, we'll cry, and then we'll look forward to 2025 with all of the lessons, the myriad lessons that I'm sure that we learned along the way.
Definitely learned lessons there, yeah.
Yeah, so before we get into it proper, I do want to say to anyone listening who didn't join us for 2024 and is not yet on board for 2025, we do have the challenge open. You need to join our Discord server to join in on the challenge. We have a channel. We have a community spreadsheet where we all made our lists. If you're not in the challenge and you're thinking, hey, I've got a bunch of games in my backlog, I need a little peer pressure, a little kick in the butt to play some of these games, come on and join us and listen further in this episode for how you can learn from our mistakes. Well, some of our mistakes, we'll say. So before we get started, some quick stats from the 2024 challenge. And these are current as of a few days ago. I don't think anyone beat any games in the last couple days in the challenge. So we had 24 people join the challenge. A total of 541 games were resolved to be played. And we completed as a community 238 of those games for a total percent of 43.99% completed. That's across the entire community. I think that's pretty good.
That's better than I thought, actually.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think some of us
impressive.
much higher, some of us much lower, and it just kind of evened out.
Well, it's funny you say that because I have our individual stats here too. So for myself, I had 45 games on my list. I completed 23 of them for 51% completion. This is going to be a little bit of a trend. Matt here had 22 games on their list and completed 11 of them for 50% completion. Jared had 30 games on his list, 15 completed for 50% completion.
Yep.
And now Soccr here, 14 games on his list, 14 completions. The only person in the challenge to complete every single game. Let's give it up for Soccr. Let's give it up.
Applause for Soccr.
There we go. Soccr, do you have any words as the champion?
Speech.
Words as the champion. Oh, I should have prepared. I should have prepared a speech.
Yeah.
I made it really easy for myself to win.
Yeah, I mean that's the tactic.
Hey.
Yeah. So generally, we'll start out the episode by just talking about how did the challenge go. I mean, Soccr completed every game. The rest of us were around 50%. I thought this was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing this with the community.
Yeah, it's nice to have like a reason to play games. I find that like also as I continue to make more friends with podcasters who have guest slots on their podcast, it has pushed me to play some games. I mean, actually, Jared's own podcast pushed me to play one game from my backlog. I played, oh my God, I'm going to forget the name of it now.
Not that memorable.
No, I guess not. It was the French game. I can't remember the name of it.
Plague Tale?
Plague Tale.
Yeah, there we go. I was
Just
also
fell
trying
out
to
of my
remember
brain.
too, and I was like,
Yeah.
I have a list of games in front of me. There's so many games in my brain. I was like, I just forget.
It's been a long year. But yeah, I played Plague Tale to do Get Wrecked on Play Along, and it was a lot of fun because I'd wanted to play it for ages, knew a lot of people liked it, and this gave me a reason to do it as well as the podcast. And I was very lucky that the game that got picked was one of the games on my backlog list. And I mean, I really enjoyed it, and I think we're gonna get into it a bit more later, like what we played. But I think everyone on this call on some level has the same amount of brain poison that like we need a reason to play a game.
Like exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Like I think some of us will play games just because we want to play something for leisure, but I think less and less it's like, oh, I want to either play this to talk about it on the Discord or talk about it on a podcast or whatever it is, and to have this list to refer to of like, well, I could play any game, but when you have like 300 games, say, on your Steam library, not that I'm being specific about anything, it might be overwhelming to look at that list and go pick one. But if you're looking at a list of 22 games, it's like, oh, well, that one's only a couple hours long and I've been meaning to play it. So why don't I jump into that, right?
Yeah.
I think it helps to have a focus because I think we all probably have some level or amount of ADHD on some level when it comes to deciding on stuff, I would think.
Yep. You hit the nail on the head because I had the exact same approach. Just I'm really good at focusing on games, especially for like podcasts, like content, games like that, where there's like an intentionality to the reason I'm playing it. And just having like this list and being like, oh, we're making the list and these are the games we're going to play. Like that helped me so much more. I get the same thing with like Netflix where I will boot up my Steam library or I'll boot up my PlayStation library and I'll spend more time deciding on what to play than actually playing games.
Yeah.
Like the allotted time I have in the day to like, hour to 2 hours or so at the end of my like work day to spend playing games, like 30 to 45 minutes is like, what should I play? Let me go through Nintendo Switch. Let me go through Game Pass. Let me go through Steam Library. So it's nice to have a truncated list of like, these are the things that I said I was going to play. And even now, like we'll talk about 2025 list, I imagine a little later, but I put mine in a wheel spin and had it randomly decide on what games I was going to pick next. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to let fate decide. I'm not even going to spend my time trying to choose one.
Nice. Yeah, for me, it was kind of the same thing. I have a bunch of games, especially since I started gaming on PC and just started picking up like 5 free games every week. And so I have a bunch of stuff. And the main kind of like takeaway from the challenge, from 2024's resolutions challenge is I always had a bunch of games that like I really wanted to play, but it was really easy to just keep kicking it down the line.
Yeah.
To be like, not right now. That game's a little bit hard. Not feeling it right now. Or like, I have this big RPG I'm playing for the podcast. Like I can't play that one right now. And there's a bunch of stuff that like I just kept finding excuses to not play, even though like I knew I was going to love them. And I guess it's like part of what we were talking about on that Backlogs challenge, that Backlogs episode with Matt, is just like, it's not that like I'm playing games that I don't like all the time. Like I have too many games that I know I'll love. I don't have time for even those games, let alone the other stuff for any other reason I might play something. So for me, it was a good way to like, just say like, I'm tired of making excuses to not play this game. I'm putting it on the list, and I got to about half of them. So half of them continued to get kicked down the line. Yeah. So it was good.
That happened to me too, where it was like, it's almost like the like I want what I can't have mentality. Cause I think about like, oh, games coming to streaming services, or like 1,000 Year Door finally came to Switch. And I was like, those are the things I want so much. And now that I have them, and I was like, I can play them anytime now. Like I have them. I don't need to play them right now. I can play them at any point. And that just keeps, that mentality just pushes them further and further and further down the line, where like this game that I wanted to play so bad, I ended up just never playing.
Now, I think, I don't know if we actually mentioned you by name, Soccr, in that Backlogs episode, but I know that we like subtext talked about you in that episode.
Oh, yeah.
The one of us in the community who just has the self-control to buy a game when you're ready to play it, play the game, and then you're like, okay, I'm finished with that one. What do I want to play next? I will buy that game, and then I will play that. So what was the Backlog Resolutions challenge like for you?
Self-control is such a weird word for it, Dave. It's like self-control over what I buy. I guess in a sense that's true, because I don't just buy it, but I'm apparently different from everyone else on Discord. In fact, I don't buy a game unless I'm about to play it, which is really unusual. But I do have this out of control list of video games on my phone. It's just a list, but I'm constantly it's growing and growing and growing, and I'm combing through and trying to sort it and prioritize it.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever it comes time for a new game, I'm looking through the list and trying to wait for something to hit me. I don't have quite the same. I don't have I don't live the podcast life, so I don't have the obligation.
You're free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some might say you're better off.
I don't feel obligated to play probably as many games out there, since you guys probably you feel some pressure to talk about a game of the moment or something that everyone's kind of talking about or playing.
Yeah.
Whereas I can be a little more everyone else can talk about that one.
Yeah.
they
True.
got
Yeah.
So it's a little different. I do feel some pressure sometimes if I still feel like I'm missing out sometimes, and I want to
Yeah, I think that's a
talk about
universal
certain
feeling.
video games. But
Yeah.
FOMO is real. I think what's funny, talking about playing playing the next thing you buy and not buying a bunch of stuff and not playing it. I feel like when I was first getting back into video games after taking a year or two break, I was doing that, and then I decided it would be a brilliant idea to start several podcasts, and that shifted. Well, because I used to pick on my spouse a lot for buying books and then not reading them. What's the point, right? Why are you buying books and then not reading them? And there are a ton of reasons to do that, and I feel like that's a thing that a lot of folks do, but I don't buy as many books. But then I started doing a video game podcast, meeting game creators, buying their game in good faith that I want to play it, and then maybe not getting to play it or whatever. And now I'm at a point where I can't even I've told her many times, I don't have a leg to stand on. I can't make that joke anymore because I have just from the last 2 years alone, at least 10 games in box behind me. Armored Core, the new Contra game, Horizon I got for my birthday this year. There's just, Kenna, Bridge of Spirits. There's just so many. Yeah, that's actually on my backlog list for next year. But we'll more about
That's
that.
good.
Yeah.
Kenna's great.
But it was one of those things that it's I've become the thing I made fun of all the time because it's just, you want to, it comes from a good place of also, especially for indie games, the physical release, it's I want more of that. I'm going to support it kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I even found myself now, as of recording, Steam Winter Sale is up, right? It's happening right now. And I don't need more games. I definitely don't need more games. But when I scroll through and I see $2.99, I'm come on, man. How do I not just jump on this deal?
Maybe I do have self-control.
Literally $20.
Exactly.
Self-control, impulse control. Yeah, literally 20 minutes before we hopped on this call, I was finalizing buying some cheap stuff in the Steam sale that not on my resolutions list for next year. Who knows if I'll play it, but
spoilers, we have not learned clearly from our from 2020.
I'm glad I own Super Hexagon in another place after that. Also, the other thing that happened by making the resolutions list of 45 games that I was planning to play. So if people listening are not familiar with Matt and Jared's podcasts, Matt doesn't do game reviews every single week on Fun and Games. They talk about specific games from time to time, but that's not the point of the show. And Play Along Podcast, Jared's show, they talk about one game for a month or longer at a time.
Yeah. Really stretch it out.
Yeah. So what happened with my list in particular, since I do a game per week basically on the podcast, my Backlog Resolutions list plus the new releases I wanted to play basically became the podcast schedule. And
smart.
It kind of smart because I could plan in advance, but then I planned too much in advance and I made plans with people that I couldn't follow through on, and I felt bad about that. I mean, a lot of people have probably forgotten that I asked them in February if they wanted to join me for a game on my list. But if
just
you
wait
haven't
long
forgotten,
enough, we'll just forget about it.
yeah. If you haven't forgotten, I'm very sorry. I didn't forget about you. I just, I didn't get to that game in particular. But that was something that caused me a bit of stress that I didn't plan on. I would be like I said, in February, making podcast plans for June, and then June comes around and I'm like, I don't want to play this game right now. And then you get into that situation where like people who make gaming stuff, podcasts or whatever, we never want to find ourselves in that situation where gaming feels like homework. And this did kind of turn into that sometimes. That's probably the biggest negative experience of the resolutions challenge for me, is that it did force me to schedule too much, or not force me. I did that to myself. I scheduled too much, and it started to feel like homework sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too, because I was going to ask in regards to like the podcast and this, like how was that balancing relationship between like, did you create a list and then, have that be the podcast episodes, or do you have an idea of podcast episodes already and you're like, cool, let's just throw those in the backlog. I'm already going to do content for them anyways.
Couple of them, yeah. And into 2025, I have some that are already agreed to and being recorded in the next, couple months. So did I learn my lesson? We'll see.
No.
The answer is no.
No, definitely not if I could guess.
Yeah. So that's just like the general kind of like thoughts about the challenge here. We have some people from the community who wrote in about their experiences with the challenge here. And we've got 4 of them. So y'all want to just take turns reading one of them?
Sure.
Cool. Let's. I'll start with Snack Taku, who is a patron. Thank you, Snack Taku, for your patronage. Snack Taku says 2024's challenge was a mixed bag. For me, I did intend to finish most games on there, but I didn't make much of a dent in it due to the fact I got sidetracked by a live service game, Helldivers 2.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Shadow of the Erd Tree, the longest DLC ever made. And then some games just didn't stick, like Cyberpunk, Mass Effect 2, and The Witcher 3. And we did say, like, for anyone who's curious how our challenge works, and anyone who's maybe considering joining us for next year, we did say you don't actually have to beat a game to consider it complete for the challenge. You just have to, get as much out of it as you wanted. And if you played 5 hours and you're like, I'm sick of this, then you're done. You checked it out. You did your due diligence.
Yeah. There were actually 2 games on my list at the start of the year that I didn't finish, and it didn't feel right to mark them complete, but I didn't want them to ruin my list. So I actually just removed them. But
well, there we go.
There you go. It didn't exist.
But I did what I wanted to with them.
Yeah. That's kind of, I mean, the last thing we really wanted is if anyone is compelled to check things off the list for the sake of having better stats, we don't want people to be actively hating what they're doing just for the sake of this thing, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that happened with me with RoboCop. I got it. I was really looking forward to it. And I enjoyed what I played of it. But after, it's easily a 15-hour game that could have been an 8-hour game. And at an 8-hour game, it would have been great. But by hour 8 or 9, I was like, I think I've seen what this game has to show me. And I enjoy it. But I'd rather be playing literally anything else.
Yeah.
And so I totally get that. Also, the live service comment, now that Marvel Rivals is out, I'm nervous for 2025 because I have too much time into it already. And a lot of my friends are playing. And so I know that I'm going to play it more. And I don't think I was playing live. And then also Monster Hunter comes out this year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I know that's one that all of us really want to play. I've already talked with Dave in the Discord about us both getting it on PlayStation so we can play together. And so it's games like that are really going to cut into the time too, because those are just much bigger in scope, replayable almost endlessly, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like Dave was saying too, it's so interesting because it's so determined on when we play something that's going to determine how we feel about it, if we enjoy it, if something else is coming out. Because I had this with Metro 2033, and the Metro games I really loved and enjoyed, but I don't know, when I started playing it, if it was other things were coming out, taking my attention. Me and my wife have really gotten into Fortnite recently, so I've been playing a lot of that, and like you said, Rivals as well has been taking my attention, but I just kind of fell off, and it was I don't want this right now. And I played enough of it where I was like, you know what, I've seen what this game has for the most part. I think I'm kind of good.
Yeah.
Dan from Canada. So says, for the past few years, I have done my own gaming goals that have led to me to play through entire series that were all new to me. Metal Gear Solid, Halo campaigns, God of War series, Remedy Universe, Resident Evil 1 through 4, and playing my first Final Fantasy game with 16 and 7 remake/rebirth. Wow, that's a lot. The second I heard about the backlog resolution, I knew it was for me as a way to continue this gaming goals, but more targeted at older games that are mostly in the category of can't believe you haven't played it. I kept saying I'd like to get to them one day. Well, now it's time to do just that.
Yeah, that's the that's the goal, I think, for a lot of us, is to knock off some of those games where, like, you know, you need that, just that little extra thing. And Dan's new joining us for the 2025 challenge, and looking forward to what they can do. Yeah.
I'll take the next one. It's Chris Taylor, good old Chris Taylor from Lightning Strikes Thrice podcast. I did participate in 2024, and I added like 20 games through the year, but still ended up completing over half of the original list, in addition to all the new titles. Show off. I will do 2025 and continue my exact behavior of adding them to my spreadsheet. I think the only change is that it caused me to spend less time with live games like Final Fantasy 14. We were just talking about that. And I would like to return to your question around and ask, why did you go through such an elaborate ploy to try and avoid reading books this year?
That's why.
I will say exactly what I said in the Discord, Chris. I did read a book. It's just one part of a much larger book. So if you were to cut the fourth Stormlight Archives book into like 5 pieces, I read a book.
There you go.
The longest book ever. Thank you, Chris.
Artful Scruff says, I didn't get through as many games as I expected, but I think it did help me to play some games that might otherwise still have just been waiting in the wings.
Perfect. And I wanted to use that as a segue into the next section. So we did mention one of like the big benefits of the challenge is that we had some of those games that were just kind of like sitting there waiting for us to play it. We knew we were going to like it. We just needed that extra push to actually play it. And this is one of the big benefits and one of the most fun things about the challenge for me personally is to have some of these games that like I've had them forever, or you know they're emulated, so I could have played them whenever I wanted, and I just needed that extra thing. And even like for some of these, like an agreement to do them on the podcast wasn't even enough to like prioritize playing them. It was just like I needed all these extra things to play them. And so I have like a short list here of some of the things from my list that I played that were examples of those where it's like, I can play these anytime. And that resulted in me never playing them. So my shining examples of this were Mother 3, Pathologic 2, Shadow Tower Abyss, Night in the Woods, Lisa the Painful, God Hand, and Tinykin, which is the most recent game from my challenge that I finished, was Tinykin. So those are some that, again, like I could have played them anytime. I never did until this challenge was the reason I played them, and I liked all of those games a whole lot.
Yeah, I have a bunch of them too. I wrote down some just so I could remember: Max Payne 1 and 2, Gungrave Gore, Cyberpunk 2077, and its DLC Phantom Liberty, To the Moon, Immortality, Cocoon, and then I mentioned earlier RoboCop Rogue City. And like specifically Max Payne 1 and 2, I've been a Remedy fan for quite a bit of time now, and I knew those games were good, and yet I never went to them. And like Gungrave Gore specifically, which was a more recent release, I think just the last couple of years, I literally interviewed a member of the team at PAX, I think East, a couple of years ago, got to demo the game, was stoked to play it, and then it came out, and I was like, oh yeah, that came out, and then and like, so I loved the original Gungrave game on PS2. Like I had every reason to play it and like never touched it, or even Immortality, which is a game that like Dave covered on the podcast and I loved, and I could only listen to the spoiler wall because I didn't want to get spoiled. Or no, you had done a bonus episode on it, I remember. And like I just was like, you know what? I'm gonna finally play it, and I did and loved it. And I'm grateful for this list making me do that. And I tried to do that a little bit, and we'll talk about it when we get to 2025, but I tried to do that again. At least half of the games on that list are just games that I've been curious about either for a long time or a short time, but that I really wanted to play.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, Immortality is probably one of the best examples of this thing where, like,
Yeah.
you knew you were going to like it. Everyone's been telling you to play it. It's just we're so spoiled for choice with games that it's really easy to. I'm sure we all, or Soccr on the potential buys list, we all have these like critically acclaimed. Nobody will shut up about them. We just like, we're not like sitting here wondering what we can play. Like there's just too much to play. Yeah. And so some of these things just fall through the cracks, even though they're amazing experiences like Immortality.
Yeah, it's just not the right time, It's not the right time for it.
We make it the right time. That's the point.
Just the right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but like, I feel like with Cyberpunk 2077, like there were a lot of reasons I didn't play it. All the hubbub, the transphobic stuff in it. Like there were a lot of issues.
Wild.
But then other friends of mine who I also know were upset about those things also finally played it and really loved it. Flora comes to mind, previous guest of the show. Like I knew she had loved the game and talked about it a lot. And so I was like, you know what? I'm finally going to play it. But also then with that one specifically, I got to have anyone who maybe doesn't know this. I don't know where you've been, but Mass Effect trilogy is some of my favorite games of all time. And I had never experienced a game like Mass Effect and how it made me feel until Cyberpunk. And what I mean was like feel like I'm in the game, made awesome. A character based on me. It's funny, what did it for Cyberpunk is I paint my nails. Folks on the video can see that if Dave uses the video. And like I've never played a video game where you can paint your nails as a male presenting character. Yeah. This game let me do it. And the first time, like at the beginning of the game, you put your hands on a table and I saw the nails that were similar color to what my nails were painted at the time and went, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's me. Yeah. And that just colored the whole experience. But like, again, it's also a big game, a lot to do. Yeah. It's not short. The DLC is not short. And I got through it because I just became quite obsessed with it because, again, like you were saying, Dave, people knew I was going to love this game. I knew I was probably going to love this game, but it was just like, oh, I'll get to it eventually. And so, you know.
So, Soccr, were there any from your list that are like examples of this that, the challenge was the primary reason you actually did go ahead and play it?
Yeah, mostly it was some slower paced games, games that were a little more meditative, and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to be like, this is going to be a more cerebral experience than just picking up Fortnite Friday night, and it can be hard to just like dive into that, I guess. So I did get some pushes. I made a small list of games like that. Kentucky Route Zero, Season, A Letter to the Future.
Oh yeah.
And Rakuin, I think it's pronounced. Which is an RPG Maker game.
Yeah.
All really good games, but actually the most significant was Omori.
Oh yeah.
Which I guess it's kind of slow paced. It wasn't as slow paced as I thought.
Yeah. I mean, it is basically a JRPG. So
yeah.
But once that got going, I mean, that's one of the best games I've ever played. So
Omori was on my list too, my resolutions list, and that's another one where like I knew I was gonna like it. It's one of those like 99% overwhelmingly positive on Steam. Like everybody loves Omori, basically. Yeah. Just when am I gonna play it? And the challenge is like you're gonna play it now. That's how it's gonna work.
Right now. Now you're gonna play it.
Yeah. Jared, how about you?
Yeah, so I had a couple of these as well, and either ones that, like Soccr was saying, were just like getting home and in the moment just didn't feel like the right time to like this thing to decompress after my day wasn't something I wanted to do, or that I had already started. One of my big proprietors was Death Stranding. Like Death Stranding, I had already did like maybe a little less than half. And I enjoyed my time, but it was one of those things where like getting home and like there is part of Death Stranding that's very like cathartic that like does make me feel at peace at times. There's also times that are very stressful and very anxiety inducing as well. And that's just not what I was looking for at certain times at the end of the day. Yeah. But putting it on there and forcing myself to finish it, oh man, the ending of that game is so good. Still incredibly confusing with what that game tries to cover, but just like at the basis of like connection and the story's still like batshit crazy, but I enjoyed it so much. And then I'm a big Nintendo guy, so there's a lot of, Nintendo has a big retro library of games that I just hadn't got to. The biggest proprietor of this was Minish Cap. Like Legend of Zelda is probably my favorite franchise, and Minish Cap has been on NSO for so long, and I could have played it at any point, and I never got around to it. And doing it for the backlog resolution, it is now like I think my favorite top-down Zelda. Minish
Yes,
Cap.
let's go.
It's such a good one.
It's
Minish
such a
Cap
good game.
supremacy. I've been shouting this from the rooftops for
You,
years. It's just
you
such a
reminded
good
me.
game.
So so Jared, you and I did Minish Cap on Tales from the Backlog.
Yeah.
We did that
Yep.
episode together. It may have been that I saw Minish Cap on your list when I think it won a Patreon poll, and I think I saw it on your list, and I was like, oh, this is easy. It's on Jared's list. Let's
It's
make
already on
this
his
happen.
list. We'll just do an episode on it. It's perfect.
So yeah, I am spying on people's lists for maybe possible
me too.
possible
Oh, me
guest
too.
stuff if I see
it's
if I see
perfect.
common stuff.
It's especially for Get Wrecked on our show, and it's like we're doing swapping gaming recommendations anyways, and you have a truncated list of games you haven't played yet, and I was like, oh, perfect. I'll
Yeah,
just go
and
through the list
these
then.
are already identified as ones that you want to play. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned another thing with Death Stranding there. Like, one of the things that I'm glad some people are using the Backlog Resolutions challenge for is if you've got a bunch of unfinished games that you want to finish, but you got sidetracked and you need another push to get back in there and finish it. I've got some of those on my list from 2024 that I did not go back and finish, but they were there. And I know there's a bunch of other people. I think there's even like maybe one or two people that like just built their list out of unfinished stuff that they want to go back and finish.
Yeah, and that's a perfect reason to do that too. Like I think I was probably like a year out from Death Stranding where I just had put it down, and when I was making this list, my mentality was like going through all my libraries, and I was going through my PlayStation library. I was like, I never finished Death Stranding. Like I need to boot that thing back up, and I'm so glad I did. A couple other ones real quick. Yeah, I always loved Mario 64 as a kid. I never owned it, but I never finished it front to back. So I did that, played through Mario 64. It's good. The controls are a little, it's N64. So, the controls aren't fantastic, but it was still an awesome experience. And then Metroid Fusion. I had never played a Metroid game, but I love Metroidvanias. And I was like, there's so many of these on NSL. Let me just play them. And Fusion was fantastic. I absolutely love Metroid Fusion.
Yeah. Matt in particular is just eating with these
Oh, yeah.
games that you're mentioning here.
Metroid Fusion.
I mean, it's no secret that the GBA is my favorite console, basically, ever.
GBA is great.
And like Fusion, I played. It's funny because I played Fusion when the year Dread was coming out. I played Fusion again in anticipation of Dread, and that was emulated. And then like the year after that is when it came to NSO, and I was like, well, it's on NSO. I might as well play it again and play through it again. Like it's my favorite Metroid game, hands down. And it's funny we're talking about the games that we added to our list that were incomplete that we wanted to finish, and I only had one of those. No, that's not true. Max Payne I finished because it was on the list. I had started it, and the only other game I put on the list to do that and didn't get anywhere with was Persona 4 Golden. I was like, I started it on the Steam Deck. I'll finish it. I'll put it on the list, and then I never picked it up again. And of course, I would never put something like that on my list again. That would be foolish since I didn't finish it last year. Would never do that.
All right, so we talked about some of our successes. We talked about some of the special games that we got out of the backlog that we're just kind of floundering in there. Now it's time to talk about our failures, and maybe the three of us, me, Matt, and Jared, will take the brunt of this, and
Soccr can just take a break.
Soccr can just sit there and shake his head and judge everybody.
Failure, the great teacher.
Yeah. So only one person out of 24 completed their whole list, and he's here with us tonight. And the rest of us didn't complete our lists. So various reasons why. And this is just a, kind of sharing of experiences, really. Like, I'm not upset that I didn't complete my list, and I'm not upset at anybody else for not completing their lists except Chris Taylor. we can just talk about some of the reasons why. Now, what I wanted to start with is there is that kind of psychological phenomenon that when you tell people your plans, it makes you less likely to actually follow through and complete your plans.
What?
And I knew about this going forward. Obviously,
like
it doesn't
that?
apply
Is
to
that the
all of
opposite?
us.
Sorry, is that a phenomenon? I would have
It is, yeah.
assumed it was the other way around.
Yeah, it is maybe a counterintuitive thing, but yeah, people who don't tell their plans out loud are like actually much more likely to complete them and follow through on them to the end. So I knew about this from, psychology research. Where am I going with that? I knew about this beforehand, but Daryl Talks Games, the YouTube channel, also has a couple of videos about backlog challenges. And he talked about this and he did, supporting research, which I did not do for this, but it is a real thing. So getting that out of the way as a possibility, looking at my list from 2024, there were a couple of games I wrote down that I was like really hot on. And then I never considered playing them throughout the year. When I was looking for something new to play or something like that, no shade to those. I'm sure that they're going to be good experiences when I get to them. But I put the Citizen Sleeper DLC on my list and I love Citizen Sleeper. I know I'm going to like the DLC. I never considered playing it. And I feel like it is kind of that thing where my brain was like, good job, Dave. You did it. And then didn't get to it. So I don't know if you all had any bit of that or if you considered that with your lists.
Yeah, totally. Max Payne 3 was that for me. I did one, did 2 shortly after, and I was like, all right, I'm going to jump right into 3. No, I'm not. Well, I'll put it on the Steam Deck. No, I'm not going to play it. And then I got Armored Core at the end of last year, or the end of 2 years ago, I guess, at this point. And I was like, new Armored Core. And I'm an Armored Core sicko. I played those games on PlayStation 2. I love those games. Got that, read the reviews, heard how great but hard it was. And I'm old and went, nah, maybe later. And then maybe later never happened. Resident Evil 3, also the remake. For all the reasons people hate that remake is why I wanted to play it. It's too actiony, great, that's what I want. It's too short, great, that's what I want. And yet I kept looking at it. I downloaded it onto my PS5, and it was on my home screen, and I'd scroll past and go, maybe tomorrow. Just
man,
never did it. And I don't know why that happened. I think we set up some weight to it a little bit in our heads, or again, it's the same way I think even when it's not on this list we were talking about before, it's like an exacerbated case of that. Well, I know I'm going to love it, so I'm definitely not going to play it right now because I'm going to play anything else.
Is there an element of anxiety to that, do you think? That's something that I experience where I know I'm going to like a game, so I get I almost freeze up. I'm like, but what if I don't start at the right time and I ruin it for myself?
What if it doesn't change my life?
That's exactly what it was for some of these for me. Also just sheer length. I had Final Fantasy 16 on here, which I played an hour or two of, and I loved it. But it was just that's going to be long. I had Forbidden West on here, another long game. I put Witcher 3 and Yakuza 0 on my list too. And I was like, I'm not going to get to any of these and all of them, aside from Final Fantasy, which again, I put 2 hours in. I didn't even boot up any of them.
That's one of the reasons that I was going to say for why I didn't complete my list is because I put a bunch of long games on my list.
Yes.
But looking at the games I completed, I beat Cyberpunk, I beat Xenogears, I beat Lost Odyssey, I beat where's the other one? I lost it. I beat a lot of those longer games. The only other really long one that I didn't beat is Octopath Traveler 2. And that's because I got sidetracked for other podcast stuff. And Midnight Suns, I never started that, but that's on my 2025 list. So I know I'm going to love that game. I just didn't get to it.
Midnight Suns is on your 2025 list?
It is, yeah.
Oh, so, I may have to meet you there and do it too, because I've had a copy of that for a while. And once people told me there are Mass Effect style check-ins, but with Marvel characters, I was like, oh, you really,
where do I sign?
Book club with Blade. Yeah. But I did beat the longer games, but those probably came at the expense of a lot of the shorter games on my list. Because I spent 75 hours playing Xenogears, that means I didn't have time to play a lot of the other stuff on the list, even the shorter stuff. because I was so preoccupied with that.
And not only that, for me, another thing was difficulty. Because of Dave, he has sucked me into the Dark Souls love, and I had Lies of P and Demon Souls on my list too. Didn't really. I mean, I had already played Lies of P, and I'm probably like halfway through it, but I just didn't get to finishing because I was like, that game it's just hard, man. It's just hard.
A lot of work.
Yeah, like Soccr was saying, sometimes I don't want to get home and like right before bed be frustrated by playing like Lies of P or Demon Souls and everything else. Like, I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I want that energy.
Or the opposite. Like maybe I'm not in the headspace to like get into the heady space of Kentucky Route Zero.
Yeah.
I want to see some explosions after I get home from work.
Yeah. Well, and Dave mentioned also like not getting to stuff because of other things. And I also stupidly and smartly, I guess, in 2024 started working with a lot of other podcasters in our circle, which was great. Like I said, I did several episodes of the Play Long Pod. I did Still Loading. I did Pixel Project Radio. And a lot of those involved me replaying or revisiting games. And the Retro Hangover, I guessed it on their show, so I replayed stuff for that. And then also on top of that, joined their Discord more actively and joined their backlog. They do a monthly game club. Game of the Month club, which I joined, which was great. And even that I fell off of. I couldn't do every month last year. And then I also signed up for yet at this point, as of when we're recording, but maybe not when we released it, unannounced project that I'm a part of that I've very poorly lied about for a long time. Because I don't even think they care. I think I've done this nonsense lie, not lie on their own show. But like I joined another thing that made me play a lot of video games from a specific year, a bunch of which I had never played. And none of them were on my list. I should have put them on my list. But it was also like in June I tried to add a game in like March and Dave yelled at me. So I was like, all right, I guess that's no more. And so that also like, I love guesting on podcasts. Obviously I'm here. Like I love collaborating with other people. But because of the stuff we do, that often leads to me playing other games, either to completion or at least a large chunk of. And that sideline my time, or games that I was like, oh, I'll just revisit it because I've beaten it before, and then play through it and its sequel, like, you know, just because I was like, oh, I'm back into it. And so like that kind of stuff also really sidetracked me. But I like doing that stuff again, like I said earlier. Like I like it being a part of the content that I get to make with folks. And so, you know, it was a double-edged sword. But I probably didn't need to play all of Sonic Adventure again, though I love it. And so I did.
You did.
I know I did. And Sonic Adventure too. But that wasn't even for that. That was for our good friend Eric's podcast. So like, it's that kind of thing too. And I think if I could be more strategic about my plans for the year and whose podcasts I'm going to guest on, maybe I can add them to the list. Like just plan ahead.
Now, that's a good point, and that's another thing that caused me to not finish my list. Because, so I had 45 games on my list, and at the time of recording, I've finished 64 games total in 2024. So, I could have finished this list. I beat way more games than I even had on this list. Why did I not beat these games? And one of the things that I noticed is that my excitement level to play a bunch of these games changed throughout the year. And so when the list went up, I was all gung-ho about playing Tyranny. And I'm still gung-ho about playing that. But it was on my list. And it's not just on my list. It's near the top of my list. And I never touched it. Didn't boot it up the entire year. So I would get to, let's say July or something like that. And I have some stuff on the list that I don't really want to play anymore. And I guess that's the nature of making a list at the beginning of the year and then following through on it for some of us through the entire year, and not, making edits to the list or something like that. So now, Soccr, you finished your list. So was this...
I love how I'm just here so you can throw out qualifiers. Most of us, anyway.
Well, praising but it's a legitimate question for you because you made the list at the beginning of the year and you actually followed through and finished it. So did you find yourself having that where you got to I got 2 games left on the list. I really wanted to play them in January. I don't know about right now, but I'm so close. I'll play them anyway.
I mean, I didn't play only the games on my list one after another, and I didn't just intersperse with new games either. What I would do is when I was ready to play, and there's one other quirk that we didn't talk about here that makes me different from everybody else, and that's that I
Uh-huh.
only play one game at a time.
Yes.
Oh,
Madness.
see,
Pick up a
that's
game.
crazy. That's serial killer behavior.
I play the game to the end, or whenever I decide I'm not going to play it anymore, and then I stop playing it, and then I play something else.
Mhm.
So when I was ready for another game, I would go to my backlog list first, and I would look there for
Mm.
something that kind of like seemed like it was fitting where I was at. You know, if I just got through a really tough as nails combat game, you know, maybe I'm ready to pick up a puzzle or something like
Yeah.
Kentucky Route Zero, or vice versa. Maybe I just played something really slow. But there was, you know, I had a mix of genres on there, so I was often able to be like, yeah, I'm sort of in the mood for that, and I was able to pick something off of there.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that many games, so I mean, like I don't know, I wasn't feeling the heat at any point.
That's true. So, just for comparison, Matt, off the top of your head, how many games are you currently playing?
Off the top of my head, if we count like ongoing games, at least 4, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think I have 4 or 5 going right now.
I think I'm around there too, and that doesn't count like live service stuff like Marvel Rivals and
Yeah.
Fortnite and things like that too that I jump into.
Well, I've
Yeah.
got some qualifiers there too. I mean, I do play Fortnite with friends,
Yeah.
but I have like a specific day for that. I also play little games, just like that are under 3 hours.
Yeah.
I've got like a separate list of those and I'll just like sit down an afternoon to do those.
Mm-hmm.
I intentionally with my 25 list was like, okay, how many short games can I find in here? Let me look for the less than 10 hour, less
I
than
mean,
6
pump up
hour
those
games.
numbers.
For the new
Put it on
list,
here.
for the new list for the new year, we'll talk about it more. But I definitely did that a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of those short games are games I wanted to play, but like, yeah, I think part of it also for me is like Jared. I am one of my podcasts is a long play along pod. Reignite. We were playing through Origins during this challenge, and now we're playing through Dragon Age 2, which we're taking pretty slow. So we'll probably take through 2025 at least a good chunk of it. But like, so however many games I say I'm playing, I'm actually still probably playing 1 or 2 more because they're the longer games that I'm just kind of playing through appointment.
Yeah.
And that's honestly been my favorite way to play those BioWare games. It's really interesting. Like, I thought I would hate it, especially the games that I really love. But like Dragon Age 2 is my favorite Dragon Age, a little controversially. But I'm loving playing it week by week, talking about it with Frankie and if we have a guest. And like, it's been kind of a slow burn in a great way. Whereas like with some of these games, like I felt pressure. Again, I'm not a psychopath like Soccr is. And so because I play multiple games, I like when I was playing RoboCop, I eventually dropped it because I would go to play it because I'm like, well, I should play this and then I'll switch to something else. And I eventually stopped going back to it. And I was like, well, if I don't want to play it, I guess I'll just stop. And like, you know, it's just, I can't just play one thing. Usually I only play one thing per console. So like a Switch game, a PlayStation game, and a PC game.
Yeah. I usually have one game per zone.
Yeah, I was like, I do that same thing. It's interesting too. You just said that like you were looking at one of the games, you're like, oh, I should play these games. Looking at my list, the games that I had that mentality for are the ones I dropped. Or at the time, I'm like, oh, I really should play this. I really need to play this right now. And those are the games I ended up like falling off.
Once it turns into homework, then you're like, yeah, fuck this. I'll play something I want to play. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We have people from, well, I guess before we do that, were there any other reasons that we can think of that like we only, most of us only got to half of the games on our list? We keep saying it. It's a defense mechanism, Soccr.
Yeah. We're all insanely jealous.
I get it. One of my other ones was just like nostalgia. Like I have SpongeBob's Battle for Bikini Bottom on my list, right? And I liked that game as a kid, and I was like, oh, I loved that game. They remade it. I probably should play it because I liked it as a kid, and then never got around to it. So I was like, it's on my list just because like I enjoyed it at a time like years and years ago in my childhood.
I took a look at your list before we started, and I saw that one was marked red. I was thinking maybe like the ones you had marked red are ones that you've decided like I'm giving up on these. I'm not touching them anymore.
Yes, those were the abandoned ones that I was like, you know what, I've gotten my time with them. Or like Battle for Bikini Bottom, where I was like, I don't
You're
actually need this.
You were just honest with yourself.
Yeah, I was like, I'm never gonna play this. Let me just be real here.
I didn't color code it, but there were a couple where I was just like, yeah, I'm probably never playing this. Not only am I not playing it in 2024, I'm probably never playing this.
Never gonna play this.
Yeah. Yeah. So we do have contributions again from the community of people who did not complete their list and why. So the first one is from Randall, a patron. Thank you so much, Randall. Randall did not complete the backlog because he says, I did participate in the 2024 backlog, but I was utterly destroyed due to multiple living titles I regularly play having major updates this year. The biggest being World of Warcraft, The War Within. And I know Randall's really into Path of Exile once that came out. So, the backlog is shelved. Randall says, additionally, given the amount of things that have occurred in my personal life, I was surprised to find maybe not a lot of time to game for the vast majority of the year. So, of course, that's another reason, if you don't have time to game, you're probably not going to make a dent in the backlog list.
Yeah,
life,
for sure.
Life be lifing. Life do be lifing.
Yeah, without getting into too much detail, I had a couple of supreme family things happen. I lost my father last year and some other stuff, and I was on a pretty good clip of completing games, and I kind of picked back up towards the end of the year, but it definitely fell off. I was just, you're not in the headspace, you don't have time, whatever else, and that's life is gonna life,
Yep.
If we were all 10 and had nothing to do and we were off from school, we'd probably get through a lot more games.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll take the next one, Snacktaku. Snacktaku, a patron. Thanks, Snacktaku, for patroning this show. I can thank you also for that.
Yeah, of course.
It's a good thing.
Thank you, Snacktaku.
My strategy going into this challenge was to tick off the big games first and then tackle the smaller games. I'm laughing because I feel like I had that idea too, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which in hindsight was a mistake. Yeah. I should have gone for the shorter experiences first, to be honest. I do feel happy with myself that I finished some games like Baldur's Gate 3 twice, LOL. Well, that's why you didn't finish anything else. And Red Dead Redemption 2, not a bad year overall. Yeah, okay. I was willing to give you some sympathy, Snacktaku, but
Baldur's Gate twice.
Baldur's Gate 3 twice?
Yeah, that's
crazy.
That's fantastic, though. I mean, that's playing through Baldur's Gate 3 2 whole times is an incredible experience for sure. Jeez. So it's not like Snacktaku is missing out on good gaming
right
doing that. Yeah.
And Red Dead too. Red Dead can be, I think base story is 50 to 60 hours or so, and you can there's so much side content in that game as well. It's crazy.
Yep. Who wants to take Lucas?
I'll take Lucas. Lucas, game over hell. Two things happened. I ended up picking random priorities along the year for my channel, and I got so into replaying the old Final Fantasy games, I postponed Dragon Quest, which was going to be a big part of the backlog.
Yeah, Lucas has a YouTube channel called Game Over Hell, which is good if people want to check it out. Good reviews. They're not 4 hours long. But yeah, making stuff, creating podcasts, YouTube channels, your plans sidetrack other stuff from time to time. It's kind of the nature of the beast.
Michael from Bits of Time podcast says, I enjoyed it. Made me try to think about the entire year of gaming. Granted, I got distracted with a bunch of awesome new releases this year, and I put far too many RPGs on my list, which I seem to always do, and that probably won't change next year either.
I mean, at least Michael knows himself.
I was like, at least you're honest with yourself,
Yeah. Michael was the guest on the Xenogears podcast on Tales from the Backlog, so I can take credit for probably 80 hours of his gaming time with just that one game right there. So, yeah, and I appreciate, obviously, playing Xenogears for the podcast. A big commitment, but it does take away from the backlog stuff. All right, we are going to take a little break in the episode, and during this break, I want to do the customary thank yous for the people who support the show over on Patreon. Big shout out to Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast crew, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Ficori, Jill, Jeff, formerly Jerf, Kieran, Soccr, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Randall, Jake Martin, Jenny E., Marcus O'Neill, David Stecco, and many more, and some new patrons. Welcome on Stefan, The Video Game Quest 64, and William Prentice. Thank you all for your support. If you're listening to this and you want to support the podcast, you can do so at patreon.com/realdavejackson. With that being said, let's get back to the show. So, I actually want to skip forward a little bit through the outline. And since we've talked about things that didn't work, reasons why we didn't complete our lists, now we're going to turn that around and talk about our plans for 2025, because all four of us are participating in the 2025 Backlog Resolutions Challenge. And surely we at least think that we learned some lessons along the way. And maybe we can pass those along to new people who are joining us for the first time, or maybe just want to undertake this kind of challenge by themselves. So one of the things that I am going to, I'm like presenting this as if it's such a big fucking like smart idea. I'm going to have less games on my list in 2025.
Hey, there we go.
45 games. Again, not that I won't beat 45 games next year, but 45 games to choose at the beginning of the year just doesn't work for me. So I'm going to try to cut my list down. It's currently at 36. My like pre-list before the year starts, currently at 36. I'm going to try to cut it to like 30 maximum. And I've already like gone through the list like 10 times and be like, I can't cut that. Because I've convinced myself that if I cut it from the list, I can't play it anymore, which is not true at all.
Yes.
You know, I can play any of these games. They just don't have to be on the list. So that's one of the things that I'm going to take into 2025 is to not have 45 games on my list. What about you all? What's an idea, some advice going forward?
Oh man, I think I did not learn because I have more games on my list this year.
There we go. Love to hear it.
Same.
I did 30 last year, and I think I have 39 on my list this year. So, but like I said at the top of the show, I have a lot of games that are like sub 10 hours. And I think that was my mentality going into this, was try to find a lot of shorter experiences that I can play, because I did put a lot of big games on there, and with the intentionality of like, oh yeah, let me get to these. I just never even touched the big ones. So I was like, you know what? Let me just try to find some smaller, more truncated experiences that I can play. I tried doing, I focused a lot on my Switch this year because I had the Switch library, a lot of those games. So I focused on that. And I tried to do a lot of like retro things as well. I have like, Zelda Oracle of Ages, I have Mega Man X on there, things like that. So I tried to find some retro stuff, and you know, those retro games innately will be a little shorter as well too. So, but shorter games, put more shorter games on the list.
Yeah, there we go. And I'm looking at Xenoblade Chronicles X on my 2025 list. Just shorter games. It's really smart. Am I gonna do that? No.
I do have a couple beefy boys in Xenoblade Chronicles and Persona 3. But you know, there's also short ones on there too.
Yeah. So, Matt, what about you? What's a change you're going to make going into 2025?
Like Jared, I had 22 games last year, and currently I have 30 games.
Let's go.
But I also, like Jared, like the majority of the games on the list are sub 10 hours. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of sub 20, and then only like 2 long RPGs. I put, as I alluded to earlier, the 81-hour monster of Persona 4 Golden again, because I did say to Dave when Dave said he was going to play it that I would also play it. Also, I think we may have suckered the Retro Hangover boys into finally playing it as well.
Let's go.
And
about time.
And so I think that'll be fun to like experience. But the other beefy one is I got gifted Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. The Legend of Heroes, if anyone knows Cam Hawkins, they know that he never shuts up about that series, and it's why I love him. And he said many years ago, that's a good starting point. It's, you know, there's some stuff I may not understand, but for the most part, it's an isolated story. I'll really enjoy it. And so I added that. That's only 40 hours. Only 40 hours.
Yeah, it's easy.
But like the other strategy I had for this is actually something we talked about before, is leaning into the if I don't like it, I don't have to finish it of it.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
adding games to this list that I've always heard mixed things about, but I've wanted
same.
to play. And so like a big one of that is I have Ghostwire Tokyo on my list because first of all, I love Tango Gameworks, RIP, although maybe sort of not. I think they kept
Maybe
the
Yasumasa,
name. I
maybe
can't
not.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're sort of alive. They're making another Hi-Fi Rush. That's all I care about. But
Ooh,
like
yeah.
I had known this was going to be a good, like it was a divisive game, but it's only 11 hours long. It's open world. An open world game that's 11 hours, like that's really short. And so I wanted to try it because the aesthetics look cool. I like the imagery, like the graphics looked awesome. You know, and then games like Pumpkin Jack, which also didn't get great reviews. And then there are other games on this list that like I like really I should have finished. Like Transistor I was going to play last year because
so
Dave
good.
did an episode on it and I didn't get to it. But I love Supergiant so much. It's one of the 2 games by Supergiant I haven't played. It's this and Pyre. And so I just picked one of them at random to finally get done this year. And then there are a couple games on this list that like there's a couple of games that like I'd started. Like I have Kaze and the Wild Masks, which is like a side-scrolling action platformer. And I started Pizza Tower after Dave's episode on it. I had already had it, I think, but I just hadn't started it yet. And like that's one of those games that like Wario Land and the like, it's very like I can play it stage by stage. And so I feel like throughout the year I'll eventually finish that one. And I also, a big change from last year is I put a bunch of games last year that I didn't own when I put them on the list. I just put them on the list because I knew I wanted to play them. This time I only have one game that's that, and it's because of the Indie Game Awards. I didn't know it existed until I saw it in the Indie Game Awards the other night as of when we're recording, and it's Crypt Custodian, which is billed as a top-down Metroidvania where you're a cat cleaning up, becoming friends with ghosts, and like taking care of crypts and the dead. And I'm like, this game was made for
It's
me.
like you're saying all the right things right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And like something I'm trying to avoid, like also a lot of games that were on my list last year were games that I got during our Secret Santa stuff. Like I got Cyberpunk for that and a few others. And so like I'm going to add all of those games and then whittle them down because I don't have to play all of them. But like much to the celebration of one Dave Jackson, I was gifted Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, which I have never played.
Yeah.
And so that went on my list immediately because I know that if I play it, it'll probably become my personality for a month and Dave will enjoy that.
That'll be best month of my life for sure. So Soccr, how are you going to repeat as champion in 2025? What lessons did you learn? What advice can you give to the people?
Yeah, I don't know about advice. Based on lists I've been seeing, I don't think anyone in your server is capable of changing. But
No, absolutely not.
I can definitely, talk about what worked for me. I do have more games this year.
Yeah,
so I guess
let's
I'm
go.
challenging myself a little bit. But this is, I mean, we've talked about how I'm different.
He's built different.
I mean, I play one game at a time, and
Yeah.
when you feel like you have to finish a game to play another one, as I do, then you tend to finish them. So I mean,
me
that
too.
definitely pushes me. I've also unintentionally did not set out to, but I have become a video game hipster who is extremely picky about what I play. Like Matt, you were saying you wanted to try out some games that you heard mixed things about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's exactly what I will just nix off of my list. I'm like, mixed? No, I don't have time for that.
I don't have time for mixed.
I think I had this realization maybe like a year ago when my list of games started to just like it got up to maybe 100 for the first time. And I was like, oh, I'm never actually going to be able to play all the good video games.
Yep.
So I'm like, what I should do is just like the slightest whiff of I might not like this. If it's not my style, if somebody that I respect says there's something that they don't like about it, I'm like, no, it's only the best for me. Only what
For
I'm
the
going to like
list.
the most.
Yeah. And you, I mean, that won't stop you from like trying something out of curiosity.
Right.
It's just, what's going on the list? What are you prioritizing? We'll say.
Yeah.
I'm also in an advantaged position because I have this personal taste. I don't really like photorealism.
Uh-huh.
And that excludes like
Yeah, it's a lot of
90%, more than 90% of AAA games.
Most of the longest games.
Yeah, which tend to be really, really long and open and have lots of little bits.
Mhm.
Like, I'm still playing long games. I've got Void Stranger on my list for next year.
You do have one of those games on your list, though. I see God of War 2018. That's pretty
Well,
photorealistic.
That's my list too.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
It's not my cup of tea exactly, but I mean, so many people like it. I feel like I got to try out a AAA game every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of games on my list like that, Soccr, but I think the ones I mentioned also are like, I heard that it wasn't to certain people's taste. And also, I played some 7 games this year that were like a 10 to me. Like, I really like Star Wars Outlaws. Yeah. Star Wars Outlaws, I really enjoyed. I haven't finished. I'm hoping to finish. But, like, I loved that game. And everyone's like, it's too basic. It's dumb. It's bad. And I'm like, but as you'll notice, Soccr, I said I have like 2 of those games on my list. I didn't put very many, so I'm mostly with you. There's so many good games. Why play bad games?
It's also nice too because sometimes I have one of those on my list. I have Marvel's Avengers on my list as well to play, which is like 12 hours. So it's like cool. I'll just play the story. Don't worry about like online stuff, whatever. Yeah. But like to play it outside of like the zeitgeist of all the kind of like conversation and talk around why the game is middling with its reviews, almost kind of like enhances the experience, right? You're not playing it when everyone else is like whispering in your ear that this game's terrible. You're like you're pushed away from all of that, and you can look at it with a different lens. So I was like, I'll try it out. I got it bundled with my PS5 like when I got it 4+ years ago, and it's been sitting in a drawer. So I was like, you know what? Let's try it out. Yeah.
One of the things that I did in the 2024 list was any physical game that I had, because I'm not a physical game collector. So if I have a physical game, it's either because I went to a store and impulse bought it, or which rarely happens, like once a year, I'll do that. Or I got it as like a Christmas gift. And, you know, I really want to play those things, you know, especially if I got it for Christmas or something like that. So I put the physical games on my list, and then like halfway through the year, I still hadn't started Triangle Strategy, and I sold it. Because I was feeling like there's 2 ways out of this, right? It's either going to sit on my shelf forever, or I can sell it and never see that box again. So I sold it.
Dang, I was like, I have the same thing where I have a very small physical library. And on my 2025, I was like, let me add all the games in my physical library. I thought this was going to be like an inspiring story of how like not you got through them and everything. And I was like, one of the things going into 2025 is one of the cool things I think it's cool that I'm doing with my list in 2025 is I have some they are retro in a way, but I have an Xbox 360, I have a Wii U, I have a 3DS, and I have some physical games because I started buying, especially games like for the 360 in particular that are not available on PC or other consoles or something. So I have a physical copy of Prey from 2006 and Alpha Protocol that I bought when it was delisted. So I have those on my resolutions list because I want to diversify where I'm playing the games. I want my 3DS to get some love. I want my Wii U to get some love. Shout out to Jacob McCourt for giving me one of his 11 Wii U's that he has down in his basement. You are now one of the 12 people that own Wii U's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have 2 games from each of those older consoles that I want to play. Actually, more than 2 on the DS because I'm gonna finish Picross 3D. It's time. That game is so long. There are so many puzzles in that game.
Dave, that's like my white whale, Picross 3D.
Picross 3D. They get really hard.
I was so into it in college, and I got all the way through perfect scores on everything except the final puzzle. And then I failed the final puzzle like 5 times, and I was like, I'm gonna do this, and then I left it and I never came back to it. And now I can't just like dive back into it.
Into the last puzzle.
It's been years.
The how long to beat on Picross 3D is like 60+ hours. Like it's a lot of puzzles in that game. But it's on my list. I want to finish it. But that's something cool that I'm doing to kind of like shake it up because I have the Wii U. Thanks to Jacob's generosity. I have the Xbox 360. I have my 3DS, but I didn't, especially the 3DS, I didn't really even touch in 2024, except for when I was getting ready for that panel at PAX East. Again, thanks to Jacob. Jacob, getting a lot of shout outs in this episode.
What's that?
Good guy. So I want to make sure that those other consoles get some love. And I'll probably end up playing those more than my Switch next year. This year.
Now I'm feeling like I should go back and reevaluate my list because even like when the shop shut down, I bought a bunch of stuff for the 3DS eShop and my Wii U as well. So I have like a bunch of like virtual console games like Donkey Kong 64 and like that on the Wii U, and it's like now I gotta play them. Gotta put them on the list.
Yeah, I actually really like that idea. Like, I have a 3DS. I can't remember who I was talking to about finally playing through Heart Gold, but I've never played Gen 2, and I have Heart Gold. I started it, but I never finished it. I should put that on my list. I bought because I did that. Like, I have a bunch of Switch games that I bought a couple years ago, like Ollie World, that I got because it was on sale, and I knew I'd play it eventually. And like, I should diversify that. I have an Analog Pocket, and like, I have a ton of GBA games on that. Like, I think it's Fire Emblem Fates is the one on there. I can't remember which Fire Emblem it is. Someone will correct me, but like on the Discord. But whatever Fire Emblem was on the GBA, I've been wanting to play that for ages. I hear it's an incredible one, and I have it, and I have the Analog Pocket. I should do that to diversify what I'm playing on, because I did do that a lot last year. I replayed the Sonic Advance series, at least a couple of games. I played Popeye 2 on the Game Boy for a podcast appearance. So like, I think that's a really good idea, Dave, and it's a way to keep it not stale, right? If you just have 40 Steam games, eventually you're gonna be like, well, I don't want to play another Steam game, right?
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. So we have community ideas for the 2025 list. And then one thing I want to do after that, before we wrap up, is anything on our 2025 list that we're like particularly excited about. Even if we have mentioned them already, maybe there's some others, but we do have a bunch of people's plans, people who think they've learned lessons from the 2024 list, just like all of us.
Lessons learned. Yeah, exactly.
All of us. Yeah. So I will get started with Roost Launcher, a patron. Thank you, Roost Launcher. So Roost Launcher participated in 2024 and says, for the upcoming year, I've adjusted my approach slightly by making the list smaller and more achievable. There we go. Very smart.
Very smart. Don't add more games.
You might call that the Soccr strategy.
Yeah. Based on my understanding of how much time I typically spend on games, I've allocated about a third of that time to larger titles that I've wanted to play for a long time, like Persona 5 or the Mass Effect trilogy. Rest in peace, Roost Launcher's time. I haven't included all the games I've purchased and won't be adding games I buy throughout the year. Thank you. It's not a resolution. If you add it to the list in June, that's not how resolutions work. Instead, Roost Launcher says, I'll maintain a separate list for such titles and select them randomly to add some unpredictability. The rest of the time I'll spend on new games and spontaneous purchases. And that's one thing I wanted to add for my 2025 plans. The big reason I want to shrink the list down is not that I'm not excited about playing 45 games again, is I want more room for being impulsive with what games I play. Maybe I saw a YouTube video and the game looks cool. Maybe I heard about it on a podcast such as the illustrious Play Along podcast or Fun and Games with Matt and Jeff, or any of the other 35 amazing podcasts in our indie community here. I want to be more impulsive with what I play, and I don't want to feel like the list is a ball and chain. So cutting it down a little bit, I hope, will allow me to be more impulsive with what I play, because in 2024 I was not impulsive. I probably made like maybe 2 or 3 games that like I played within like a couple days of deciding that I wanted to play it. A lot of them were like, I'll play it. Well, let me put it on the schedule for 4 months from now, and then I'll get to that. And that's like, that's not great. So I agree with what Roost Launcher said here.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I also think that, Dave, that's a great idea, because then when you impulsively decide to finally replay the Mass Effect trilogy and listen to my podcast, you have plenty of room for that.
Correct. Yeah.
Up next is Rouge, a patron. Thank you, Rouge. My list still being a work in progress. I'm aiming for about finishable 30 games to have on my list and leave enough room and time for roguelikes I already own and new games that I want to pick up to be able to play with others throughout the year, because they are hot at the moment. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense too. We talked about that before, like wanting to leave room for Monster Hunter Wilds.
FOMO. you want to be part of the conversation as we have our awesome, lively Discord community and the other communities we're in, and you want to join the conversation.
Yeah, totally.
We're all kind of social players, I think.
For sure.
We love talking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we're here. We love talking about video games.
Almost more than we play, though, which is fun.
Rouge also says, so all in all, hoping to strike a balance between playing what I feel like at that moment and clearing some great games in my backlog. Yeah, I mean,
good approach.
It sounds like a good approach, and I think that's kind of where we all sort of landed as we've talked through this episode, is like kind of leaving more room to like not just, oh, well, I have time to play a game. I guess I'll play one of my backlog games.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I'll do the next. I got Randall. So Randall says, in 2025, I plan on trying to play some games I've let simmer on the backlog burner for far too long, while also allowing myself to not be held down by the burden of the ever-growing list. Oh, there's a running theme going on here. Gaming is fun, and I want every year to be a new lesson on how to have that fun. I think that's a good like rule of thumb for this, right? It's like enjoy it. Like we're doing this, and we're building these lists to play these games to have fun and to enjoy playing the lists. So just if it ever gets to a point where you're feeling obligated or you're not having fun, then just play something else, or like just kick it off the list, or take a little break from it too, right? You don't have to play all of it right now. You could take a little break and come back later if you want to.
Yeah,
if it's
for
never fun, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
We all have like this. I mean, the point of the list is this: we have these like potential amazing experiences sitting in our Steam library, and we want to make sure we get to some of those. But you need to be in the mindset where you're open and receptive and ready for it, rather than like, well, let me just check this fucking box off so my stats go up.
Yeah.
I guess I'll take Dog Nozzle. Dog Nozzle is a patron. Thank you for subscribing. It was easy to put my list together since there are lots of oldish games I want to play, but not a ton that I already own. Most of my picks are games that I know are good and that I started at one point, but put them down because I wasn't in the mood for it at the time. Other than that, just tried to keep the numbers down and limit the total hours to something doable.
Yeah, and Rouge, who's one of our spreadsheet wizards in the Discord server, added a column of total how long to beat.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Yeah,
I was not in favor of it, just to be clear.
It's an idea with good intentions, but I'm also looking at that column that says 884 hours to beat my list for 2025, and I'm like, woof, that's a lot of time. Again,
I think I'm just going to avoid looking at that so I don't get overwhelmed by the number of hours.
Yeah, but stats are fun. I'm looking forward to seeing
fun.
Rouge is going to do a bunch of like behind the scenes stat keeping.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. The 2026 Backlog Resolutions podcast is going to have a bunch more stats.
We're gonna have like a year in review, like just Spotify Wrapped every year for the
exactly
the Backlog
and then
Resolution.
We're gonna have like fucking Backlog Moneyball, Sabermetrics, and everything going on. It's gonna be awesome.
It's gonna be great.
Oh man.
Next up is Lucas again from the Game Over Hell YouTube channel. For 2025, Lucas says, I'm going to have to plan my 2025 resolutions more realistically. Keeps coming up, that theme. Eyes too big for our stomachs. A lot of us
Hubris.
Here. Yeah, hubris. Lucas says, when I think more about the likely number of games I might just decide to play out of the blue or for content creation challenges or anything like that. So again, it's like a really consistent theme here that people want to free themselves up to be more impulsive while still participating.
Lenka, new for 2025. I don't have a strategy yet.
Nice.
That's fine. You're in the place we were last year. It's totally fine. Except that maybe trying not to buy more games because for some reason I tend to.
For some reason.
Yeah, for some reason. Except for the ones coming out next year. Those don't count. I'll definitely buy those.
There we go. I like to hear
That's
that.
how I feel about Pokemon Legends EA. That doesn't count.
Well, that's not that should definitely not come out next year because then everything's gone to hell once that comes out. And then I'm kind of hoping that limiting my giant backlog to just 17 games will help me reduce my decision paralysis. Yeah, that makes sense on what to play, but at the same time is still enough to pick something based on what I'm in the mood for. Yeah, I mean, that's been like the running thing we've talked about. And I think that's really... Analysis paralysis is like the reason I don't play games when I don't play them.
Yeah.
do something fun with it. Like I said, I have a literal wheel that I spin, and I decided recently, I was like, you know what, let me get a jump on some of these games. And I used the wheel, and the wheel picked Mafia Definitive Edition, and that game has just engrossed me. I put like 6 hours in it, like the day I started playing it, which is like, hey, it was kind of the perfect game for the perfect moment. So like, throw some fun way of picking games in there too to add some excitement to it.
And Lenka's a new patron. Thank you, Lenka. I forgot to write it on the spreadsheet, but I appreciate it. And Lenka says something that's really similar to what Soccr said was part of his success for 2024's list is allowing yourself to be able to pick something kind of based on mood, but not necessarily based. Because Soccr, didn't you have like an action game sub list and like a kind of narrative slower game sub list? So like whatever you're in the mood for, something's going to be there that you want to play.
Next up, we have Artful Scruff says, keep expectations low. I love this. I probably won't get through all of these games accounting for new releases. I think I've chosen games that are a little more within my usual wheelhouse. That's probably fair. Keeping expectations low and know that we might not finish all these games this year.
Yeah.
It's probably good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun challenge, and like hats off to you if you do finish all the games, but like
Soccr.
I'm not going to finish all of these. I'm going to keep adding games until January 1st. I know how this works.
Yeah.
So
That's all too real. That's what I did. I was like, oh, I have these. The problem was just like Prime Gaming and all those free things. They're like, here's some more games. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll download them.
Yeah, exactly. And again, my weird brain is telling me if I'm excited about playing a game, it has to go on the Backlog Resolutions list. I can't
play it if it's not
on the list.
And if you delete it from the list, it's gone forever. Just know that it gets erased from your hard drive and you can never play it again.
That being said, it kind of having it on the list is a reminder that this is something I really want to play. There are so many games that I'll look through my Steam library and I'll be like, oh, I own that and I really want to play that. And I forgot that I bought that for $2 in a Steam sale 2 years ago. So the good with the bad.
Yeah.
I've really painted myself into a box here. It's going to be super
pressure.
Embarrassing if I don't finish all my games next year.
Yeah, you have an expectation now.
Arguably, none of us have any pressure for 2025 except for you.
Except for Soccr.
Oh, man.
Dan from Canada, who is joining the challenge for the first time in 2025, says, I am very aware of how many hours I play per year, so is quite realistic about my list. 300 hours out of 500 or so. Saving the remainder for Switch 2 games and other random 2025 games.
2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I also added a reason for each game on my list in the sheet, because I'm like that.
That actually is a really good idea.
Yeah, I like that.
We have not talked about the possibility of Switch 2 coming out and just fucking wrecking all of our plans next year. Because there's going to be, like a new Pokemon, new Mario. There's going to be stuff you want to play.
Some
Prime
new
4
franchise.
Metroid Prime 4, yep.
Yeah, some new weird shit that you've never heard of, but it's going to be awesome.
New weird Nintendo shit.
Mm-hmm. Finally, we have Control-Alt-Noob, who is new joining for the challenge. She says, there is no chance that I will get through all the games. Good expectations in check at the beginning.
Yep.
I like to hear that. So I am just aiming for a good chunk of them. Lately, if I only have 1 hour at the end of my day, I won't play a game because it doesn't feel like enough time. It's a weird thing that I definitely empathize with. I get that all the time. So I will sit and watch stuff on YouTube for an hour and gain nothing from it when I could have been playing a game. Anyway, Noob says, I feel like I'm waiting for my holidays to binge some games. I think this challenge could help with that and help reestablish gaming back into my regular routine. So there we go. Yeah, trying to defeat that idea. It's coming from all the parents are listening to this and just being like, you only have an hour and you feel like you don't have time to play games. What are you talking about right now?
Right, exactly.
So all of us privileged to think that an hour is not enough time.
Right.
I count myself in that too.
Yeah. And like you can do so much. Like there are many nights this week alone that like I haven't played Mario and Luigi Brothership because I'm like, oh, it's an RPG. I don't have time. Meanwhile, like I'm in the middle of a dungeon where there's lots of enemies. I could just clear the dungeon of enemies and like that's a thing I did and then turn it off. But like I don't think that way because it's an RPG and I'm like, well, there's like 20 more hours to go. I can't do that in an hour, so I can't do any of it. You know,
thinking of that overall number, I do as well, and then I'll justify that and then go spend like that amount of time like watching a TV or like a YouTube video too. I was like, I could have just been playing games. I could have done this.
Yeah. Okay, so those are all of our community contributions, and I really thank everybody who, number one, is participating in the challenge, whether it was just 2024, whether you're new for 2025, or whether you are in for both years. So thank you for that, and everyone who wrote in with their thoughts and contributions. It's been a lot of fun going through the challenge with everybody in that Discord channel. We celebrate when we check things off the list with each other. We talk about, the fun we had. Everyone sees, oh, you beat that game. How was it? Stuff like that. It's been really great. So I appreciate everyone participating and then sharing those thoughts in this episode. So before we go, I do want to just kind of talk about some stuff we're excited about playing from the list in 2025. So Jared, what's on your list for 2025? Maybe not the whole list, but like anything jumping out is like, I'm really excited that this is on my resolutions list.
Yeah. So I have a couple on here. You mentioned it earlier. You called me out for it, but Xenoblade Chronicles, I have played, not fully, but I played some of it, maybe like 15, 20 hours or so, because I did a Get Wrecked episode with Barry from Nintendo Fuse. Yeah. And I had never really played any of these games. It was a series that I really wanted to get into. And I just fell in love with that world. And even though I had like the idea, I didn't know how many hours the game was when I started it. I was like, I'm not going to look. I'm enjoying my time now. I don't need to know how long it's going to take me to get to this end. I'm enjoying the moment that I'm in right now. Yeah. But it's good. I'm excited. Same thing. I played it for the podcast and it kind of just got buried between other podcast games and other, Get Wrecked shows that I was planning for. So I'm excited to get back into it. I also was playing it on the original Wii and now have bought it on the Switch, the definitive edition. So
good call.
I'm excited. Which I was like, let me just do this because between quality of life stuff and just visuals overall, it'll probably be a smoother experience if I play through it on Switch than play through it on Wii. So I'm very excited to play through that. I have Animal Well on my list because I've just heard so many people, yourself included,
good one,
just rant about how incredible this game is. So it was on PS Plus as well. So I was like, let me throw it on there so I can play it. So I'm really excited to check that out. Another one I'm excited about that just recently got an announcement for a sequel is Okami. Okami is another one that I bought on a whim on a PlayStation sale years ago for like $10, and I just never got around to playing it. Yeah. And people have done lots of comparisons to Legend of Zelda in that case. Yeah. And it's the same thing where it's like, this is fundamentally my shit, but I just never jumped into it. Yeah. And I already had it on my list, and seeing that it's getting a sequel too is just even more motivation for me to play through that game. So I'm excited to play it. It's a little longer than I thought it was going to be, but I'm excited for that nonetheless. And then last, I'll say Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, because I've always loved those games. And we played, I think last year for the pod, we played through the 2016 reboot. And Rift Apart looks like it's more Ratchet and Clank fun, and it's beautiful looking. So I'm excited to play through that on PS5.
Nice. Soccr, how about you? What are you particularly excited about?
Well, I'm suddenly kind of pumped about Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, Hi-Fi Rush is great.
I wasn't sure about it at first, but then like I watched a couple more trailers, and everybody only says good things about it, and I'm just, why haven't I played this game yet?
Yeah. It's a feel good game. Like you're just gonna feel great playing it, and it's just a feel good game.
I mean, it looks great, but also another one, Heaven's Vault, which is apparently like a language puzzle game. It always comes up when people mention Chants of Sonar.
Yeah.
I guess it invites comparison. I actually researched this one for a bit, and I decided I wasn't gonna play it, but then person after person keeps talking about how awesome it is. So I have to think I'm in for something good, especially, I mean, like I'm a sucker for puzzle games. Any puzzle game I'm super into. Pseudo Regalia is I guess the other one that I would mention, which is
looks like a lot of fun.
3D Metroidvania.
Yeah.
Good platforming. Like The platforming kind of reminds me of Blue Fire, based on the little bits that I've
Yeah.
seen.
I love Blue Fire.
I
Blue
still
Fire was
haven't
so
played
good.
it. That's been on my list for maybe it's got to
Oh,
go on the
That
list.
was on my
Blue-
2024 list, and I did
Yeah.
not play it.
I saw that one on your list. That's Blue Fire's fun because it's like it feels like you're
Yeah.
breaking the game whenever
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Also very Zelda-y in some of its presentation
Yeah.
too. Remember me a lot of Zelda.
Yeah, that's true. Pseudo Regalia gives me similar vibes, and
Mhm.
just 3D platforming in general is a great time. And maybe I'm still coming down off the high of Astrobot, but
There we go.
Yeah.
Cool. Matt, how about you?
So my list, I have a couple categories, not by genre, but like what brought me to put them on the list. One is game codes that I got either because I got to interview folks at PAX and like the pressure was off to play the game for the show because I'd already talked to them about it and they gave me a code after the interview or with the interview, or I demoed it. And then there's a section that's like older games, not retro games, but I guess they're retro now. Stuff from like the Xbox era and like Xbox 360 era and a little past that I never played that I've always wanted to. And then just newer shit that I've always wanted to play. And so like for the stuff I got code for, it's like a Gestalt, Steam and Cinder, a Metroidvania steampunk game that I started and I really liked and I want to play, that I got code for. The Rugrats game, Adventures in Gameland, we interviewed the dev. It was a great interview. It's only like an hour and 50 minutes long, and like it's like a classic like side scroller Nintendo style game that I wanted to play. Another one that I got code for, I know it's on this list somewhere, Key Locker, which is a bit of a beefier RPG, but it's got this like Undertale style aesthetic, but it's like a cyberpunk like hacking the system kind of in a digital world kind of look that I really liked, and I played the demo, and so I've been wanting to play that. Moving towards like the older stuff, like that's not super old, but old enough that I've always wanted to play. I got a physical copy of Pikmin on Switch, Pikmin 1 and 2. And so they were both on my list last year. I just put the first one on my list because it's only 8 hours and I feel like I could probably get through that. And I've always wanted to play it. Inside, I loved Limbo. Played it when it came out, played it on the 360. And never played Inside, and then got it on when it came to Switch, and I was like, I'm going to play this game. That was probably like 3 years ago, and so definitely want to play that one because I'd been hearing stuff. Having just played Immortality, I recently bought Her Story on sale. I want to play that also because I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Great.
And then like stuff like Vanquish and Metal Gear Rising, because Dave's a sicko, and these are Dave's sicko games. But also because again, they're from that era of like the Xbox 360, Xbox One, like action hack and slash games. And then the new stuff is like, Ghostwire Tokyo, I mentioned before, Kenna Bridge of Spirits, Crypt Custodian, which I don't own, but I've wanted to play for quite some time. Moonlighter 2 just got announced, and so I put Moonlighter 1 on my list because I've always wanted to play that. And Call of the Sea. My best friend Yuri Lowenthal's in that game, and I feel I owe it to him to play that game, mostly so then I can tweet at him something about cool stuff he did in the game. Pumpkin Jack also, I watched the Shane from Retro Hangover stream a bunch of it, and it basically looks like exactly what I wanted, which was a easier to play Medieval. I love the Medieval remake. I love the original game, but there are just certain things about that game that's hard because it's an older style game that it looks like Pumpkin Jack kind of rectifies, and so I've always really wanted to play that one as well. So and then there's a bunch of other stuff, long RPGs and things I mentioned earlier, but I think having a smattering of like the why, and then there's like Half-Life's on here because I know Dave's played it, and I know that Jared wants to play it, and so like I feel like that's a good one. Maybe we'll do it for your podcast, Jared. I mean, who knows? Maybe. But like that kind of stuff too is like people I know who've also expressed one. Oh, and then there's one sequel on here that I bought Finding Paradise after playing To the Moon last year. And so I was like, well, I want to play the next one because I want to play that whole trilogy. I figure one a year could be a fun way to experience that trilogy.
You've been warned about Kana, right?
Yeah, I've been.
It's hard as hell.
Kana is beautiful, and it's such a fun like 3D platformer, but it does get kind of hard. It does get difficult.
Does have difficulty options though.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I am one to drop things to easy if it like I played most of the Yakuza games on easy because I just wanted to experience the story.
Yeah.
So like, I have no qualms about that. So,
And I mean,
That's the way
the
to
combat's fun, but it's the story and the visuals are the best part of that game.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
For my list, I have kind of a mix of some stuff that like I have a couple games on here that have been in my Steam library like since like the first couple weeks that I had a Steam library.
That's
and
awesome.
So I haven't played like the like XCOM, Enemy Unknown or Enemy Within, whatever the expanded version is called. I want to play that. It's been in my library this entire time, and so I want to play that. I talked about my like wanting to play stuff on my other consoles. So like I'm gonna play No More Heroes. That's my plan on the Wii U. Xenoblade Chronicles X also on the Wii U.
Yeah, Xenoblade, let's go.
Might not be the smartest move. It might be better to play portably on the Switch when the remaster
that's
comes
right.
out.
It's coming to Switch. That's right. That's right.
Well, I'm never said I was a smart man. And then I have a couple of interesting ones that I'm excited like to put on the list because there are things that like they're easy to pass over or something. So there's a free like Ultima inspired game called Moonring on Steam that looks really cool. It has this amazing black but like colorful art style. And it's free and it's apparently really, really good. But you know, like I download free stuff all the time. And because I didn't pay for it, I feel like I feel less of a pressure to play it.
Yeah.
So I put that on my list. There is a free browser game called Koru.observer that I have on my list that I picked out of, there's a writer for PC Gamer and I don't know how to say his last name, Dominic Terrason, something like that. Who posts like the coolest but most obscure games on Blue Sky and Twitter all the time. And this looked great. It's a browser game, so it's free, and it looks wild. So I put it on my list. I don't play browser games. I want to try it out. And then the last thing on my list that I'll point out, because I don't want to just read down the list, I'm going to beat Ring Fit Adventure. I'm going to get through the story of Ring Fit Adventure.
And I was like, hell yes.
I'm like maybe 60% of the way through it. Like it's a long campaign.
It is,
but I've played quite a bit of Ring Fit Adventure and I'm going to beat it.
But think how shredded you're going to be afterward. It's going to be great.
I hope so. I need to get back into working out more, but like I legitimately like Ring Fit as an exercise.
Yeah.
And you can do it for like 20, 30 minutes and be wiped. It can be a tough workout.
Yeah.
So like the story is absolute dog shit in that game, but I want to get to the end.
Moves you along.
It is. It does move you along. It is literally Bowser is in another castle, except Bowser is a dragon who's obsessed with working out, and he's moved to a different set of levels.
It's true.
To work out.
He's the toxic gym bro. That's he's the bad guy. Of that game.
So that's perhaps the most interesting game on my list to say that I'm going to finish is Ring Fit Adventure. So it's cool though. So I'm looking forward to it. And we have, so far right now we have 23 people who have made lists for 2025. And this is the call. So if you're listening to this, if you made it to the end of this and you're either not in our Discord server or you are in the Discord, but we're kind of undecided whether you wanted to join us or not, come join us. Make a page on our community spreadsheet, and then we can play through these games. We can celebrate when we check them off the lists. Yeah. And again, one of the best parts about it is there are amazing experiences that are just kind of sitting in the shadows in your Steam library that your eyes pass over as you're scrolling down the list that you own, or maybe, if you have stuff that's on Game Pass or if you get those free PS Plus games or the free Amazon Prime games, those just go directly, there are the Epic games, they go directly into the Epic library. I never open Epic, but they're all in there. So we have these awesome experiences in there, and some of them we do just need a little bit of a push. And I say peer pressure jokingly, because it's not like anybody in the Discord is like a dick about it or anything, but just a little push to play some of these games, to like me saying I'm going to beat Ring Fit Adventure.
Yeah.
Instead of the Ring Fit ring being prominently displayed in my living room with dust on it. So,
I mean, just out of frame
not
up here is my Ring Fit ring that I haven't touched since I first got the game either. So
right. So yeah, we are really looking forward to the 2025 experience of going through this. Again, it's no pressure to finish your list, except for Soccr. Massive pressure on Soccr to finish his list.
Yeah, I'm so screwed.
For everybody else, it is just a fun thing. Make a list of those games that you feel like you really want to play, but for some reason you keep passing up. And it's going to be fun. So I appreciate the three of you joining me to look back on 2024 and look forward into 2025.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm happy to do this. I will point out, Dave, that we have a difference of 6 games currently on our list, and my time is like half of yours, and so that makes me feel better. Makes me feel better.
That should make you feel better. I don't know what the fuck would happen with my list. It's like 100 of my hours are Xenoblade Chronicles X. That's
I mean that's true.
Xenoblade's taking up a big part of mine too.
Yeah,
that's funny. I know this has been awesome, and genuinely, doing this and doing it in the server has helped me play through some of these games in my backlog. This has genuinely helped me play more games and have made me find some of the games that I have had some absolutely amazing experiences in too. So it's been great.
Any last words, Soccr? Or are you just basking?
Just basking. Thanks for having me. I love to talk about video games.
It's great to have you. Yeah. And a little tease, a little incentive, something to look forward to for Tales from the Backlog fans. As it goes, out of necessity, but also out of interest most of the time, most of the games that I complete from my Backlog Resolutions list will end up on the podcast because I can't play Xenoblade Chronicles X for 90 hours and not do a podcast about it. That just won't work. Yeah. So you can look forward to a lot of those. Maybe I'll do a Ring Fit Adventure episode.
That would be really great.
That would be great. I would love to hear your journey through Ring Fit Adventure.
Please do that.
Talk about the story, all the deep
philosophical
themes.
Put up the spoiler wall.
Yeah. Okay. So the spoilers are up. Now we can talk about those leg kicks. Woo! All right. Well, before we sign off here, we should mention the things that the guests on the podcast here do. So Jared and Matt are hosts of podcasts. Matt is a host of multiple podcasts. Jared is a host of one podcast, really, but you have a lot of stuff going on the show. Yeah. So let's talk about those things. So Jared, tell everybody about Play Along Podcast, please.
Yeah, just one more time. Thanks for having me on. This was so fun, and I'm pumped to get into this 2025 list. I was anxious in a good way to make my list. I was ready. I was like, come on, what are we doing the list? Yeah. I was ready for it. But yeah, I'm the host. Me, myself, my other two co-hosts, Kai and Ben, host Play Along Podcast, the podcast where we kind of play through games in a book club style. As Dave mentioned, we'll kind of take a game and spread it across a month or so. We'll cut it up into different sections and then come together each one of those sections and kind of discuss it specifically, talk about our feelings, talk about our predictions going into the next section and everything, which is a ton of fun. And myself and the other two all have a wide variety of games that we like. So we play just so many different genres and franchises and everything, which makes for a lot of cool games that we get to play, which is awesome. And then we have another side series on the show called Get Wrecked, in which Matt and Dave have both been on their respective episodes, where we grab a guest from the internet, we swap video game recommendations. Again, just another way to try to chip away at the backlog, the ever-growing backlog. So this backlog resolution actually helps with that, with, like I said earlier in the episode, just to find list of games to recommend to people, but also just to have games on there to play. So yep, that's me. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts.
Right. Yep. And this goes for Play Along and also for Matt's podcasts. I will put them both down in the show description, so you don't have to search. Just go down there, click the links. Maybe as I'm talking about myself later, or as the music plays us out of the episode, go find some stuff to listen to. So definitely recommend Play Along Podcast, and I recommend what Matt is making. So Matt, please tell people about Fun and Games and Reignite.
Sure, yeah. So Fun and Games, broadly, the main show is a topic-based podcast that I host with the incredible Jeff Moonen. We cover different genres of games. We do retrospectives like Jeff... You're Dave. Jeff is my co-host. Dave guested on an episode we did all about the Xbox 360, which, for the record, Dave called as soon as we started doing retrospectives, and we were able to...
I could not wait.
Could not wait. But we also interview developers, composers. We talk about like signposting in video games. Is grinding in games good? Living, breathing worlds in games, that kind of thing. And then we have a sub-series within the feed called Side Quests, where a different host every month, or not every month, I think it's 3 every 2 weeks. A different host talks about a game they love and why they love it, born out of wanting to bring more positivity to the gaming space. Everyone on this call has done an episode. Soccr's done one on Jotun, I believe is how it's pronounced.
I can't even remember now.
Never even remember. Jared, I believe, has done 2, and then Dave, I've lost count. I can't keep up. Dave has done 2.
I've done 100.
You like 100 of them at this point. Dave, after playing certain games, will go, by the way, Matt, I'm just earmarking. At some point, I'm going to do side quests about this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah. All right. But the idea behind that is like every game is somebody's favorite. It good, bad, doesn't matter. And this curated list of almost, as of when we're recording, 350 games has just been so much fun to do. And then every 50 episodes, we do like a milestone episode where me and Jeff are joined by a guest and do kind of a longer format of it. I can give a tease that by the time you hear this is already out, but for our 350th episode, we're doing Sea of Stars, which Jeff, myself, and the incredible Sarah Moon and his wife are all huge fans of, and so we're going to gush on that. But I love doing that series. And then briefly, too late for briefly, Matt. Briefly, I have another podcast called Reignite. Started as a Mass Effect podcast, played the original trilogy, decided to do Andromeda, which I'd never played, but my co-host, the incredible Frankie Bradley Lestrange, had played. We did that. When we were done with that, we're like, well, I guess we have to do Dragon Age now. So it's a BioWare-focused podcast. We are currently as of this recording, playing our way through Dragon Age 2. We've also been current because there's a new Dragon Age game that we've talked a little bit about that we will, of course, cover at the tail end in like 2 or 3 years from now when we get that far. And if you like play-along podcasts, if you like BioWare, if you love choices, and most importantly, if you love romancing folks in video games, we are the perfect podcast for you. So you should definitely check that out. Find all my stuff at djstormageddon.com. I'm on a bunch of social medias. All of the links to like Patreons and other things are there too. Go check it out, djstormageddon.com.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I always give the recommendation for everything that Matt makes and everything that Jared makes whenever they're on the show. So again, I will just reinforce that recommendation. Please check out Play Along Podcast, check out Fun and Games. And if you want to play along with BioWare games, look no further than Reignite. And also, Soccr is not a podcast host, but we appreciate the contributions to this episode. So thank you for coming on, Soccr. And is there anywhere you would like to direct people?
Just to Dave's Discord. Come to Dave's Discord. Come to Blue Sky. Talk to me about video games. It's easy to be my best friend. Just geek out about one of my favorite video games with me.
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, that is that's how this started. That's how Soccr became a podcast guest mercenary. Is a shared experience talking about Rain World, which we did on the podcast last year together, which was fantastic. So thank the three of you for coming on. This has been awesome. Really was looking forward to kind of reflecting on the challenge in 2024 and then looking forward to 2025. So this has been great. Thank you all. And one more call for everybody. If you're listening and you want to join us, there's an invite link for the Discord server down in the show description. So you can easily join us. Come in, make your list. We have some people on the list who have 40 plus games. We have one person on the list. Shout out to Mikey Tabletop, who has one game on his list.
Yeah, let's go, Mikey.
Hey.
Binary. Do I complete my list or not? Very easy for Mikey. So no pressure to make a big list. Come in, do what you're comfortable with. It's going to be a good time. So again, that invite link for Discord is down in the show notes. And in addition to being the place where the Backlog Resolutions Challenge happens, it's also a great community of lovely folks who just love talking about video games. It's a nice place. It is a supportive place. It is a friendly place for everybody. I work hard to make sure that it is a place where everyone feels welcome and comfortable. We just want to come in and talk about games and talk about the podcast and stuff like that. So, that's the Discord server. You can also support the show by leaving a rating and review. This goes for Jared and Matt's podcasts, of course, as well. Ratings and reviews help people find new podcasts, and that's what we really want. So if you're listening on Apple, if you're listening on Spotify, if you're listening or watching on YouTube, like and comment over there, leave ratings on the podcast apps. It's super helpful. And last but not least, if you want to support me and my shows monetarily, you can do that at patreon.com/realdavejackson, where every patron gets to vote in polls for what games I do on the show. You can also get bonus episodes. I do a bonus retro gaming series. I do a bunch of stuff on the Patreon, and I appreciate everyone who supports. So that is all for this episode. We're not going into a spoiler section, so I don't really know how to end. I don't know how to do this. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
Hello, my name is Andrew.
I'm Dylan.
And I'm Aubrey.
And
we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
Our podcast aims to cover the world of video games from the perspective of the average gamer. Whether you casually play games on your phone, have a high KD in Call of Duty, or you're somewhere in between, we believe that makes you a gamer, and our show is for you.
Since our podcast started in 2022, we have done deep dive episodes on over 40 games, including The Witcher 3, Diablo 4, Marvel Snap, Cult of the Lamb, and more.
We've also discussed a wide variety of topics such as video game music, toxicity in gaming, cozy games, games based on Star Wars, and video game genre definitions.
Additionally, it's our goal to use our show to shine a light on other awesome creators by inviting them onto our podcast for interviews. We've had the pleasure of talking to podcasters, streamers, cosplayers, musicians, authors, and Donkey Kong record holders.
If any of that sounds interesting to you, we would love for you to check out our show. You can find us on all of the podcast platforms, YouTube, and on our website, fngamers.com.